Hello everyone, welcome back to Current Economy and Investment Insights. Today is May 3rd, 2021, and I'm Ron Jankowski with Channel 4 in Palos Heights. And my co-host is Paul Munichel with Ameriprise, and he's at his studio as we have been through the COVID crisis. And Paul is going to give us an update as to the activity that took place last week. Paul, I'm going to let you take it away, and then I'll be back and give you the latest as of this morning from Ameriprise's notes to us. And stay with us. Paul, take it away.
Thanks, Ron. Today we're going to talk about the economic implications of a slower population's growth. Let's dive into the data. Last week, the Consensus Bureau announced the results of the 2020 census. Now, according to the Bureau, the U.S. population grew at a rate of just 7.4% over the decade from 2010 through 2020. Now, that's the slowest pace since the Great Depression. In that period, from 1930 through 1940, the U.S. population grew by only 7.3%. Now, news stories will place a heavy focus on changes in state-by-state results, given the implications for representation in the House of Representatives. However, the results offer direct economic implications as well. Population growth, or more specifically, growth in the working age population, has a direct linkage to how fast an economy can grow over time. The number of people available to make things or provide services times how productive those individuals are is the basic formula for an economy's long-term potential real rate of economic expansion. Now, these influences were clearly seen over the pre-pandemic decade as real GDP growth averaged just over 2%, well below its long-term pace. Despite the slower pace, the unemployment rate steadily declined to levels considerably lower than the plus or minus 5% rate long thought of as resulting full employment. And inflation remained weak as well, dynamics that are also very much influenced by this background demographic changes. So we're going to have to wait and see how the population change, or I should say the slower population growth, is going to affect the market in the long term. But that's the data for now, and I'll send it back over to you, Ron.
And thank you, Paul, for that update. The notes as of this morning from Ameriprise is as follows. The U.S. stock futures are advancing in early trading as investors prepare for the first trading day of May. The yield of the 10-year Treasury is steady near 1.65% ahead of the release of new inflation data later today. That should be interesting to hear what is going to happen with the new inflation information. Stocks in Europe are mostly higher, with Germany DAX leading the gains, and the UK market is closed today. Global oil prices are steady this morning as growing demand from the US and China helps offset a concern over the worsening COVID situation in Indiana. It should be interesting to see what they're going to do to help out with this COVID situation there. The year-to-date index returns are as follows. S&P 500 is a plus 11%, Dow Jones is a plus 11%, and the NASDAQ is a plus 8%. The market is pretty steady and solid. Stay with us. We will be going to our show called Your Money. Paul will have a topic that's usually of interest. We'll be right back. And we're back with our show called Your Money. Paul usually has a topic of interest. Paul, take it away.
Okay, for the second half of the show, I do want to focus on inflation a bit more and dive into the data on what we're looking at with inflation. So you may have noticed that the topic of inflation is getting more attention. Those who were around in the 1970s likely still remember when rapid rises in the cost of living were of great concern. But for those who are younger, the concept of an extended period of high inflation may seem strange to you as you've never experienced it. The conventional wisdom is that during periods of rapid economic growth, inflation is likely to pick up. There is speculation that the economic recovery underway now, in conjunction with the dramatic stimulus measured by the federal government and the Federal Reserve, may set the stage for another bout of significant inflation, and this would be a dramatic change. In the past 9 years, the annual change in the cost of living never topped 2.3%. The last calendar year when inflation was measured at a more than 3% rate was back in 2011. It last rose as high as 4% in 1991. Now, by contrast, from 1974 to 1981, the cost of living soared each year by an average of 9.4%. In that 8-year span, the fundamental cost of living in the US doubled. As we all know, inflation can take its toll. But when inflation is in check, it becomes more likely that the standard of living for individuals and families will improve. Interest rates tend to track with inflation trends, so lower cost of living increases usually keep interest rates down. That makes borrowing cheaper for purchases like homes and automobiles. By contrast, when the pace of change in the cost of living picks up, it makes things more costly for consumers, potentially slowing economic activity. History indicates that high inflation can result in a more challenging investment environment. If interest rates track higher with inflation, the market value of bond declines, and that's the bond prices and interest rates moves in opposite directions. In the high inflation period of the 70s and early 80s, stock markets struggled as well. Let's talk about the inflation rate. The most cited measurement of inflation, the Consumer Price Index, weighs changes in prices for a basket of consumer goods and services. It helps give individuals and policymakers an idea of cost of living trends over time. The most important number focuses on core inflation, and that's a measure of goods and services that eliminates cost changes for food and energy-related commodities. It is felt that components like food and energy are subject to wild fluctuations that can be caused by geopolitical developments or weather events. Because of their volatility, they are considered a less reliable barometer for broader economic trends. Finally, why the concern today? The growing optimism that the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines continues and the economic recovery will gain steam. At the same time, the economy is still getting a lot of support. The federal government has provided $6 trillion of stimulus in the past year. This has come in the form of direct payments to individuals, enhanced unemployment benefits, special support programs for businesses, and aid to local and state governments. Likewise, the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates at historic lows and purchased billions of billions worth of bonds to help add liquidity to the markets. Finally, will the confluence of a steady return to normalcy along with dramatic fiscal and monetary stimulus light enough of a fire in the economy to make inflation a bigger concern? Only time will tell, but it is an issue that bears close watching. Be careful not to overreact to short-term upswings in inflation, but it is always good to have a long-term plan in mind to respond to changing environment. As always, consult with your financial advisor to discuss how your portfolio is positioned for the future. And again, as always, for those of you at home that do not have a financial advisor or are looking for a second opinion to the one you're working with, feel free to give me a call. As Ron said, my name is Paul Munichel. I am a financial advisor at Ameriprise Financial, and I can be reached directly at 708-226-3412. Have a great week.
And thanks, Paul, for that topic. For Paul Munichel with Ameriprise Financial. and myself, Ron Jankowski with Channel 4, we both wish you good investment day.